As a kid, I really struggled with anxiety and depression, and later on, it turned into like an addiction. And so I like to touch on these issues, and I like to touch on them like in a way where we could present these stories to our children. My name's Ruby Guerrero. I am a muralist that goes by Mr. B Baby. I'm originally from Chula Vista. My mom, however, is Puerto Rican, and my dad is from Mexico. The name Mr. B Baby is actually my initials, which is Mr. Michelle Ruby, and then the B stands for Brown Baby, because most of my work is really cultural. I feel like all the work that I create it intentionally with a Latino twist. With all the gentrification going on, I like to have murals that represent our culture, especially in like places like East Los where it's very Latino dominated. I want people to see my murals and feel a sense of representation and feel proud of their culture. To me it's really important to create not only cultural pieces but also pieces that touch on mental health. I think like during high school is when I actually experimented with acrylic paint. And I remember having to be somewhere in an hour and messing around with it and creating these blends and it being this magical experience. This is so cool. And then I got frustrated because I had to leave and I couldn't finish the piece. With acrylic, you have to work fast, But it was my first touch of creating with acrylic paint, and ever since then I just kind of became addicted to it. I actually first moved to LA. I attended this children's book convention, and for that convention we had to have a portfolio and present our work. I had brainstormed with my sister and I was like, okay, let's write a book about the popular Aesop fables that we grew up on, but let's give them a Latino twist. And I created Chucho, who was actually originally the wolf of Red Riding Hood. He was like a piñata wolf. And then over time, I just continued to develop him. Chucho, and with all of the rest of my art, I tell a story about mental health. For me, it's really important to touch on these subjects because as a kid, I really struggled with anxiety. With Chucho, I've developed this entire story behind him, and in short, Chucho is a piñata, and piñata's original story was that they were filled with seeds and then held over the garden. And once the piñata broke, the seeds would spread and the plants would grow. And so I really connected with this idea that through brokenness comes growth. And so he's my symbol of that we're growing through our struggles, and essentially he stands for resiliency. He's my daily reminder of that, and he pretty much shows up in all of my pieces. And then I have Chaco, who is this horse that I created, and he has a hole in his stomach where butterflies fly out, and it symbolizes anxiety. And I put him in all these different scenarios that kind of have him overcome his anxiety. Regardless of him being anxious, he still goes forward and does it. And I have my little Maria characters, which are inspired by Mexican rag dolls that they make in Mexico. And I grew up obsessing over them, and my mom never let me have one. And so now I have millions. First and foremost, they're iconic to Mexican culture, so they represent culture, but they also represent my inner child and my daughter. So with those dolls, I feel like they tell so many different people's stories, and so I love to include them in a lot of my work. My inner child is something that I really tend to and I really consider, and I feel like a lot of what I do as an artist is kind of tending to my inner child. Before I had my daughter, I was a drug addict. And then I got pregnant, and then my life completely changed. And when I brought my daughter into the world, obviously I started to get my life together and try to get a job and provide for us. She changed me as a person, and I found this spark and this love for life that I had lost a long time ago before I had her. She kind of put this idea in my head that I was like, you know what, I love painting and I love creating, and I don't want to be another story where I become a mother and now my dreams are lost, and I want to really be able to pursue this dream and this love of mine and show her that it's possible. For me, growing up, I didn't have a safe space to talk about mental health. My family dismissed me, and they didn't necessarily believe in depression or anxiety. I had it really bad to the point where I was like held back a grade because I didn't speak. I just didn't want to speak. That's how bad my anxiety was. And so for me, I really want to create a safe space for my daughter, which is why I want to create a series of books that talks about these issues so kids feel like less alone. I didn't think I would work with half of the people that I've worked with now. You know, I've got to travel to Australia, I've been to Japan to paint, I've been to like places I never would have dreamed of going, but my art took me there. And so it's just been like this dream state where sometimes I have to pinch myself to be like, is this real? Because it's just been a dream. I think being a single mom and also being a full-time artist and entrepreneur is like, I think that's like my hardest struggle in life, because it's really hard to find a balance just from work and motherhood. I feel like when you're exceeding in one, you're a little bit neglecting the other, and it's like this constant guilt almost that I carry. But at the end of the day, I try to remind myself that, you know, through all of this work, I'm ultimately doing it for my daughter. If I could make a living painting some fuzzy little guy, like anything's possible.